Hey, welcome to The Explainer. We all spend years and years in school learning what to think, but how often are we actually taught how to think? Well, this Explainer is all about giving you the tools to solve problems more creatively, and we're taking our inspiration from one of the greatest minds in history.
All right, let's kick things off with a little riddle to get your brain warmed up. Picture this. A dead man is hanging in a room that's locked from the inside. There's nothing else in there with him except for a puddle of water on the floor, right underneath his feet. So how did he die?
The answer? He stood on a giant block of ice. And that puddle, well, that's all that's left of it. Now, this riddle is brilliant because it immediately shows us a fundamental bug in how we usually think. We see a puddle and our brain just labels it puddle. We don't automatically ask, hey, what was this before it became a puddle? Our minds get completely trapped by the information that's sitting right in front of us.
And that right there, that's the core problem we're tackling today, and it's summed up perfectly by our source material. Despite all of our schooling, we are never taught how to actually think. We get really good at memorizing facts, but that crucial skill of creative thinking? Yeah, that often gets left in the dust. So let's start fixing that. So, before we can even think about upgrading our mental software, we first have to diagnose its most common bugs. Let's dive into what we can call your brain's 4 biggest blind spots. Our source points out 4 huge roadblocks that get in our way. First up is inertia and sloth. And that's just our brain's natural laziness, its habit of always taking the path of least resistance. Then you've got incorrect logic and incorrect perception. Now they sound pretty similar, but trust me, they are critically different. And finally, there's rigid thinking, which is when we get stuck seeing a problem from only one angle. Okay, so here is the crucial difference. Incorrect logic, that's just a simple mistake. It's like a typo on your math homework. You accidentally write 1 + 1 = 3, but someone can easily point out your error and you'll get it. But incorrect perception? Oh, that is way more dangerous. That's a deep flaw in your mental operating system that actually convinces you that 1 + 1 = 3 is the truth. See the difference? One is just a mistake in the final answer. The other is a fundamental flaw in how you see reality itself. All right, so we've diagnosed the problems, the bugs in our system. Now for the fun part. How do we fix them? Let's start building our mental toolkit, beginning with a super simple 3-step framework to bring some clarity to our thinking. It's called the RED model, and it's an absolutely fantastic filter for your thoughts. It's easy. First, you recognize assumptions. What's a hard fact versus what's just an opinion? Then you evaluate the information you have, trying to be as objective as possible. And only then, after you've done those first 2 steps, do you draw your conclusions. It's a really simple but powerful sequence. Separate fact from fiction, check your own biases, and then decide what you think. Having a framework like RED, that's a total game changer. But, sometimes the biggest breakthroughs don't come from finding the right answer. They come from realizing you've been asking the completely wrong question all along. I want you to think about a major challenge you're facing right now, maybe at work or in your personal life. Got it? Now ask yourself, are you 100% sure you're focused on solving the real problem here? Just asking that one simple question can be like hitting a giant reset button on your entire way of thinking. The goal here is to find what's called the problem's essence, the real core issue that's underneath everything. So, for example, you might think your problem is, I need to buy a new drill. But the essence of the problem is actually, I need a 1/4-inch hole in my wall. And suddenly, you're not just shopping for drills anymore. You're open to all these other creative solutions you would have totally ignored before. So, that's about looking outward, at the problem itself. But what happens when we turn the lens around, on ourselves? How can you be sure that your own deepest beliefs are actually built on solid ground? And for that, we're going to borrow a trick from the ancient Greeks, the Socratic method. It's basically a disciplined process of just asking why over and over again about a single belief you hold. Why do I believe that's true? What's my evidence? Okay, but what if I'm wrong? It's like a stress test for your own logic, and believe me, it is brutally effective at finding the weak spots in your own arguments. Okay, we've got our frameworks, we know how to ask better questions. Now, let's bring in the big guns. Let's see how the master himself, Albert Einstein, used these exact same principles to literally change the world. He did it with a powerful tool we can call his what-if engine. The formal fancy term for it is Gedanken experiment, which is just a German word for thought experiment. It's basically how you test a hypothesis in your imagination when you can't possibly test it in a lab. You just take a wild what-if scenario and you follow its logic all the way to the very end, no matter how weird the conclusion gets. When he was just 16 years old, Einstein asked himself a really simple question. What would I see if I could ride on a beam of light? Well, in his mind, the light wave right next to him would look like it was completely frozen. But the laws of physics at the time said that light can never be frozen. It was a total paradox. For both of those things to be true, one of the fundamental facts about the universe had to be wrong. And by playing out this impossible scenario, Einstein realized the flawed assumption wasn't about light. It was our 200-year-old belief that time is constant for everyone. And that single thought experiment, wow, it paved the way for his entire theory of relativity.
So, that leaves us with one final thought experiment. And this one's for you. What is one fact, in your life, in your work, anywhere, that you have always accepted as true? And what happens if you dare to question it today? Because that, right there, is how you start to think like Einstein. Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.